I'm doing well. All right. I think we're going live now. Hello, welcome everyone. Happy Friday. Another edition of Get a Clue in 52 for coaches, myself included. Started off thinking, hey, let me give back to this profession, this endeavor of coaching. As you know, it's a unique relationship as opposed to like friendship or therapy or other forms of support in our lives. This is the third tips book, Get a Clue in 52. We started with just the original edition with the original categories. Then we went to the entrepreneur edition. I've been reading a tip a week for years now. It feels like 3-4 years. Oh, Patty's here too. Let's get Patty in. Hi, Patty. How are you? So my opening comments here. So this year, I'm vice president of communication for the Professional Coaches Alliance, and wanted to feed two birds with one grain. And as long as I'm advocating for the profession of coaching, why not make this year's tips book all about coaching? I'm working right now on next year's tips book. I've got to make a decision like this week and get into production on it and start writing and all of that. So we'll have some announcements moving forward in the next couple of weeks about what's in store. But let's go ahead and get into what we're doing now. We're talking about 52 tips for coaches, right? Welcome to Get a Clue in 52 for coaches, myself included. We started off with 11 tips in the self-promotion section. 11 tips. We got to become a coach, get comfortable calling ourselves a coach, and get comfortable telling the rest of the world that we're a coach. And after a while, hopefully we don't get too comfortable, because the truth is we're always more than a coach. So we want to evolve in our self-promotions from learning how to coach, getting comfortable calling ourselves a coach, getting comfortable calling the world a coach, or telling the world that we're a coach, but then also expanding to promoting our ability to solve problems, Coaching is one way. Right. So hopefully you're all understanding we were more than a coach before we became a coach. We're more than a coach while we're coaching. We're more than a coach after. But it starts somewhere. And so when we're letting the world know that coaching is one of the ways that we can solve problems, we ultimately want to move people towards engagement or enrollment. So they're synonymous, but engagement is what we want inside of an organization when I've got direct reports. I want employee engagement, but enrollment is what I want. If I'm a private coach, I want people to enroll in my coaching programs, my marketing programs, my group coaching, whatever it is. So engagement or enrollment, both cases, it's permission to lead. When I've got somebody engaged, when I've got somebody enrolled, I've got their permission to be a leader in their lives, careers, businesses, what have you. Once they're enrolled, engaged, once we have permission to lead, then it's just motivation plus accountability equals results. And so here we are in the land of accountability, and we're getting towards the end of 10 tips in this section. And let me go ahead and review those before I read today's tips. So tip number 1 in the land of accountability was find a way to love. Accountability on surface gets a bad rap about confrontation and drill sergeant and browbeating and hold me accountable, confrontate, all of that stuff. Underneath it all, it takes love, the willingness to be vulnerable, to be willing to do any of it. Right. So that's very important. It's a relationship that is rooted in the mutual willingness to be vulnerable, which is what love is all about. That's what accountability is all about. Next, we want to look within. Before we endeavor to hold other people accountable, we have to look within for our own experiences of being held accountable, our own willingness to be held accountable, our own walk of the walk, talk of the talk, walk of the talk, talk of the walk, right? Are we a product of the product? Are we able to look within? Do we have the experience of being confronted, being held accountable, looking within, digging deep for our discipline, for our self-reflection, for our coachability, etc.? So then in that process, we want to get really clear on goal setting. And now goal setting exists out there, SMART, and it's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. And I thought, wow, that's really cool when I first learned it, because it was better than anything I'd known before. But as I got more advanced, and it didn't take me long, you realize, wait a second, somebody can set a goal with that criteria without changing any of their behavior, and they don't need me if they don't need to change behavior. That's what coaching is all about, is behavioral change at the end of the day. So I added an A to focus on behavioral change, ambitious, and then I changed the R, because if we're going to change behavior, we better be motivated enough. So instead of realistic, do I believe I can do it, which we cover with achievable, I created reason or reward for the R, like getting people super, super clear on why, and why. Are you clear on 6 reasons why you want the goal, or you only want it for one reason? Because if you only want it for one reason, if there's only one reason you want something, you might get around to it. But if there's 6 reasons you want something, you can be unstoppable. So we focused on all of that. And now it's time to look outside. right? Look outside for an external accountability source, but more importantly, one that knows what they're doing, one that's got some skill sets, some training, some acumen, some discipline, some far enough distance from their own interests in our relationship to actually say what needs to be said and confront what needs to be confronted. I don't want to totally poo-poo and dismiss the idea of an accountability partner, a friend that you call, hey, are you going to the gym today? We say, hope. Anyway, there's a lot of slippery slope there when professionals aren't trained in accountability, when there's other layers of investment in the relationship. How successful can people really be holding each other accountable without training, without skill set, without acumen, without dialogues, without structures, without certifications, whatever the case may be? And then again, if you're my friend and I've got other reasons that I want to hang out with you, how much am I going to press you? Am I going to say what needs to be said? Am I going to risk the pushback and the smoke and the mirrors and the slippery and the slidey and the excuses and the stories? It's really, really important to not just look outside for an external accountability source, but to make sure they know what they're doing if you can. All right. Next, when we are endeavoring to hold other people accountable, we want to secure permission. We kind of talked about that when we talked about engagement or enrollment. These 9 tips are all about the process. What do we need to do in order to get permission to lead? And whether we're getting people engaged in what they're doing or enrolling them, there's a lot of stuff we got to do to earn that permission, secure permission, earn the permission to lead, get people to declare, yes, I give you permission to call me out. I give you permission to confront me. I give you permission to show me something new, to hold up the mirror, to question, to challenge, we want permission to do all of those things. Next, authoring state of mind. This tip comes up in the land of motivation when we talk about mindset. Of all the things that motivate people, it's either external strategies, tactics, and resources, or internal values, attitudes, beliefs, drivers of inner psychology, patterns, habits, addictions, etc. So we want to be able to get in and author, change our state of mind. I did some really neat coaching around this earlier in the week. I've done a wonderful project for the Institute of Canadian Citizenship where I discussed the 3 ingredients to authoring state of mind, the 3 points of entry to get in there and take a negative, unwanted mood and replace it with something more powerful. As a matter of fact, guess what, you guys? I did it this morning. Right before this call, I was in an unwanted mood and I had to, and use my own medicine and get into the happy Friday, jovial Jeff, right? And it's not always easy, even if we know it, even if we teach it, if we've had success at it, doesn't mean it's easy to do, to get in and intervene and stinking thinking and get ourselves into the productive mood that's going to lead to better behaviors, because every behavior is preceded by the belief that we're focused on at the time. And belief is one of the 3 ingredients of state of mind. So there's more that we could talk about there. Then 2 weeks ago, we talked about gathering tools of confrontation, putting them into our toolbox. When we're getting ready to confront somebody, we need some understanding, some awarenesses of information that shows up in the form of tool that helps us initiate confrontation. And by the way, Patty's here with me. Patty was with me live when we came up with the word profrontation instead of confrontation, because con indicates negative. But what we're doing in this context is we're positively confronting. So why not call it profrontation? But it's not easy. There's anything that feels pressed upon is going to press back, or anything that feels pressed upon might run away, right? So we don't want anybody to run away from our leadership, and we don't want anybody to necessarily push back in an unhealthy, unproductive way on our leadership. I understand dialoguing and everything, but the idea is we need tools that make this effort to confront easier. Just the same way a hammer makes it easier to get the nail in, or a screwdriver makes it easier to turn the screw tight. We need communications tools, understandings, knowings about shifting posture or range of emotional engagement, or what we're going to get into today is the power of questions. We're going to elaborate on it, but understanding logos, ethos, pathos, and the ingredients of persuasion, from whether you're consulting Aristotle or Robert Cialdini, and all of the thousands of years in between those two. We know about persuasion, and that's ultimately what we're doing. You say coaching, but nobody says, oh, what do you do for a living? I'm a persuader. But that's what we are as coaches. We're persuading people to give up the old behavior in exchange for a new behavior, get a new result. I digress. Last week, we talked about perspectives on time management, and we see time in quotes there because if you've been following along at all, I don't like calling it time management because time manages itself. We're fooling ourselves if we think that we can manage time. Father Time's been managing time since the beginning of time. So let's leave it there, right? Father Time's doing a great job. What we need to manage is whatever we're in 100% control of. Our decisions, our calendar, our actions, our mood. etc. So we talked about perspectives on time management, and that leads us to today. So before I get into a word for word reading of today's tip, which is the power of questions, and by title in here it says ask questions, but I just thought for my banner and for my promotions I'd say the power of questions to see if the word power got anybody else to show up today. And it did. Patty, you're here. No, I'm joking. Before I get into the word for word of it all, let me thank you guys and welcome you guys, Sue and Patty, for being here. Happy Friday, and in your case, Sue, Saturday. Do you guys have any opening thoughts, comments, questions before I get into the word for word reading of today's tip?
Yeah, always good to be here.
I know it's the middle of the night for you, isn't it, Sue?
Wow. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Well, hey, 24 in a day, get your naps in when you can. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of the 90-minute sleep cycle. When I learned about the 90-minute sleep cycle, all of a sudden, all 24 hours opened up to me, right? As long as I can take anyway, I don't want to digress in there, but, napping is powerful. If you get a 90-minute nap, you'd be surprised what you'd be able to do. Even a 30-minute or less nap is really powerful to just take a little break and get back going with your day. If you're falling asleep at the keyboard and you try to press through, you're going to be unproductive, making mistakes, drowsy, etc. Just get off the keyboard, take that 30-minute nap, and then get back after it. Or a 90-minute nap. I'll get into, I think we've talked about that before, is the math of sleep. But yeah, it's great for you to be here. Patty, did you have anything to say? Hello?
No, just hi. It's always good to be here. I've missed a few the last few weeks, been away.
Yeah, well, it's cool that we stream them. They're there, on my LinkedIn or on my Facebook. I mean, they're we're streaming them into even the YouTube. We're streaming into 3 social media channels this year, and that's why I chose StreamYard as the platform to get it into 3 different social media channels. So props to StreamYard. So let's go ahead, page 153. If you're following at home, and get a clue in 52. This is tip 39 overall, number 9 from the section on accountability. Let's go ahead and get into the word for word of it all, because obviously I feel like my coffee is kicked in already. Here we go. Tip number 39, ask questions. Don't just ask questions. Strive to become a master at asking questions. Again, a human brain, once hearing a question, will always attempt to answer it. That is a powerful knowing, because it means that questions are among the most effective in a category of communication techniques called attention getters. Simply put, when you have someone's attention, communication is easier. And when it comes to accountability, even the most permission-based and loving confrontation is much easier when you have someone's attention. One key to all of this is how much more likely to provoke a defensive response with a statement than a question, or how much likely it is, right? I think that's what it should say. How much more likely it is to provoke a defensive response with a statement than a question. I'll slow down. You guys get that? If I make a statement, that's more likely to provoke a react, right, than a question. A question's an invitation. A statement is a press. Okay. All right. When possible, always replace statements with questions. And as an example, allow me to provide a stream of consciousness. That means like when I wrote it, I was stream of consciousness, list of questions I might ask a client in the context of holding a client accountable to committing to the actions that will accelerate their progress, and then making sure they do what they say they're going to do. Enjoy. So this is a stream of consciousness list of questions here. All of these are questions, right? Here we go. Did you say you are committed to that action? Is that something you are committed to accomplish by yourself, or is that something you want me to hold you accountable for? Would you like front-end accountability? How long will it take you to complete that action? When is the soonest availability you have to complete that action? What are you doing between now and then that is more important to your goals than this action? Why is that important? Which of those 2 things is really more important? Are you comfortable pushing this off until then, or can you reschedule the less important to prioritize the more important? What are you going to do when you hang up the phone? And after that, and after that? Or get off the Zoom, right? As we update our technology, right? When is the soonest you can possibly complete the action we are talking about here? Would you like between session accountability? Would it help if you committed to letting me know as soon as you complete the action by text, email, or phone? Smokescreen, SOS, pigeon carrier, message in a bottle, Morse code, Pony Express, anything. Would it help to say, take that, coach, in your message when you notify me on completion? Do you want me to set a reminder in my calendar and phone to remind you to complete this action? If so, how soon before your appointment with yourself would you like to be reminded? How will we know when this got done? What will be observable after you do this that is not observable now? How could I observe that? Are you comfortable with the power, or are you comfortable with the power of your word that you'll complete this and I won't ask you about it until the back end next session? Would you like me to trust that you'll get this done by the next time we talk, or would you like to make an AWS, appointment with self, on your calendar and invite me to attend so it shows up on my calendar as well? Next, what is a consequence you wish to avoid that you can commit to suffering if you fail to complete this action? What is a great reward you can give yourself for completing this action? Taking a deep breath. I could go on and on because I love coming up with different questions that deliver the ingredients of accountability in permission-seeking ways. Whatever the opposite of a pet peeve is, I experience it when people in my life, especially prospects and clients, say, "That is a really good question," in response to my really good questions. Keep questions in mind as we turn to the last tip in accountability, the integrity game. The next tip brings it all together in the form of my 10-point model of integrity. 10 points that, when taken as sets of questions, can be seen or used as the anatomy of coaching programs. In fact, everything that Get a Klu used to deliver, coaching, consulting, training, certification, mentoring, and all the info products, except for the Get a Klu in 52 series of books, is currently being repacked into the integrity game branding. The tip that follows originally appeared in the very first version of Get a Klu in 52 in 2019. This version right here. Then repurposed as chapter 12 in my book, The Integrity Game. Right? And so there we go. Next week, we're going to go over the 10-point model of integrity, but it follows on today's tips because guess what the 10-point model is? It's 10 sets of questions. So I'm going to be sure to give a nice highlight to today's tip next week. Power of questions, ask questions, right? And then get into the 10 most powerful collection of questions I've ever come up with. And the ones that I just read today are pretty powerful. Right? Pretty powerful when it comes to accountability. But if we really want to make accountability non-threatening, which is one of the reasons I believe I'm on the planet, is to make accountability non-threatening, even though I fail quite often as a human being, right? These questions are amazing. The 10 questions for the integrity game. So I'm really excited. I've been trying to stay just pure, Get a Klu in 52 when I'm doing these Fridays. But the reality is every now and then we mention the integrity game, and shout out to you, Sue, who you were our guest all-star when we talked about one of these question sets on the 10-point model a couple days ago, potential, which breaks down to vision, mission, objectives. How do we declare our potential? What prevents us from declaring potential? Why is it so important? What strategies do we have? We had that beautiful conversation the other day. And so here's, next week, there's a nice little point of intersection where Get a Klu in 52 integrates with the integrity game as I gas pedal and clutch it, like learning how to drive a stick shift car, as I wean off the Get a Klu stuff and promote the integrity game. But I'm always going to be doing, my goal is to do a Get a Klu in 52, one of these books, a tips book, every single year for 10 years. So 3 down, 7 to go. What's it going to be in 2024? I'm going to be making that decision within the next couple of days, maybe even this weekend, and start writing. So if anybody out there wants to be involved in the next Get a Klu in 52 project, now would be the time to get a hold of me. Having said all of that, 18 minutes in this morning, thank you, Sue and Patty, for being here and giving me the energy. That always makes a difference. I can do these things solo and just look into the camera and imagine a million people out there watching. But when you guys are live on the line, it puts a special focus on the interactivity, the joviality, and I thank you guys for being here and that energy source that I get from you guys. So let me open it up. Comments, questions about the power of questions, any of those sample questions that I've asked, you could comment on where this tip fits in the context of the 8 others that we discussed and the one that I previewed next week. Open conversation now. Welcome and thank you for being here on Get a Klu in 52 for coaches, myself included.
I really got a big highlight in that last question in the list.
Oh, let me go back to it. Let's see.
What is a great reward you can give yourself for completing this action?
Yeah.
And, it's a great question to ask, like a client or even ourselves, but the power of that reward is important too, because it, sort of like the snowball gets bigger and bigger as you reward yourself, then you're more encouraged to do more actions. So I really love that question. I'm going to start asking it every coaching session I do.
Yeah, well, there's a lot that we can unpack there. Number one, the tip is about questions, but your comment is about conditioning, right? And one of the things that we do as coaches, if we're doing it world class, the way I, teach it and train it, is we're conditioning. We're not just confronting, we're conditioning, right? We are conditioning people's relationship with their word. We're conditioning their levels of integrity. We're conditioning their muscle memory for taking action. We're conditioning their ability to celebrate wins before getting into the challenges, right? We're conditioning their punctuality. We're conditioning their, you guys understand. So I think what you bring up there when we talk about conditioning is what is it? It's pleasure and pain. Right. So, that question that you liked, it comes right after the one that precedes, which isn't as fun, is it, Patty? Right. What rewards, what punishments can you create? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it gets me back into, a little bit of my challenging mood before the session. But yeah, it's tough with the kids. Right. What rewards if you listen to mom and dad and you obey our rules? What punishments if you don't listen to mom and dad and you disobey our rules? We love our kids and we don't want them to suffer at all. And how do we condition? Right? And how do we be good parents? And how do we set boundaries? And how do we, say no to the things that are going to harm them? And, encourage them to say yes to the things that are going to be healthier for them. It's a big challenge, right? So I don't mean to compare coaching clients to children, but.
Well, there's a connection because as a parent, you have an automatic permission.
Yeah, an automatic. That's not enough.
No, but it's a start.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. We have the authority. We don't have to ask them to tell us what the mission is going to be. We just got to decide. But I've done that before. Brody, Abigail, AJ, what do you think the punishment should be if you can't get home by the time we told you to be home? What do you think the punishment should be if you take your iPad into the bathroom again? Whatever it is. I don't know whatever all the parents in the world are dealing with, but we just, automatically we just decide what the punishment's going to be, and then it's ineffective, right? Maybe it is more effective to ask them to declare and determine what their rewards and punishments will be, and then hold them accountable to what they've declared. That's what the integrity game is trying to do, is ask people to answer these questions, and now we know what we're holding people accountable for, their answers. Right. And so, I like to balance pleasure and pain. We know that pleasure and pain are the only two things that motivate anybody. So I never like to just use pleasure. I like to use pain also. And I never like to just use pain. I like to use, you follow? And then we talked about this in the coaching and leadership training where we're getting leverage, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we don't want to know what do you want? How bad do you want it? Are you willing to commit to actions? Are you willing to change the behavior? What does it cost you in the past not to have it? What does it cost you right now not to have it? What will it cost you in the future not to have it? That's pain, getting them associated to pain. Then we want to back that up with, hey, tell me about a time in the past where you have had that. And what would it feel like to have that now? Moreover, if you got that in the next 2 to 3 months, who are the first 5 people that you would call and celebrate with or share that with? Or what would you do 3 months from now to celebrate if you knew that you were achieving your goal, or at least 70, 80, 90% on the way to achieving your goal? What would you do to celebrate? So it's really important to make sure that we're introducing pleasure and pain, having conversations about pleasure and pain, making sure that our clients and prospects can declare what's in it for them, pleasure and pain wise, and that we don't necessarily give them those answers, but ask powerful questions that pull that out. So I love that you love that, Patty. And that's some of my feedback on you highlighting that, is conditioning and balancing pleasure and pain as the two dominant motivators. And we can get really, we can get more effective on how we introduce all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And as parents, golly, I'm so much better at this when somebody's paying me in a scheduled session than when I'm, willy-nilly parenting on the fly. I'm a human being and I've got emotions and things that build up inside of me also. So nobody out there should mistake the fact that I'm getting on here and I wrote the book and I'm willing to be vulnerable and read a tip. Don't mistake that for any sort of perfection, please. What else? What else do we have today on the power of questions?
On that theme of conditioning, what I love about questions is it almost acts like a pattern interrupter. or a pattern disruptor, because it gets us out of, if we're prepared to ask the question, the person that we're asking the question, I think it helps them to get out of maybe a routine or habitual way of thinking.
Yes.
And reacting or responding to something, and gets them to actually stop and consider, oh, hang on, what is my response?
Yeah, I mentioned this up front, and it's worth repeating. A human brain cannot hear a question without trying to answer it. And so if my brain is like the river that's flowing this way, as soon as I try to answer a question, I intervene in the flow, because now my thought needs to go. Now, when you say pattern, us coaches know what you mean. But for anybody that may not know what you mean, right? Why does somebody run a pattern, tell a story to run a pattern? It's so that when we're telling a story and when our thinking goes a certain way, it's usually in the form of a belief we're focused on, a story that we tell to reinforce the belief, which gives us an emotional feeling. So we're on our way to giving ourselves the emotion that we've always gotten, right? And that's why a question, it's a pattern interrupt. The questions are fantastic pattern interrupts. And the more ridiculous the question the better. So if somebody's like, let me use myself as an example. If I'm telling one of my old stories about how my mom and dad, all they did was watch TV and they weren't ambitious, so that's the reason that I grew up in poverty and now I've got scarcity thinking and I'm running that pattern, somebody but if somebody wants to interrupt my stinking thinking and interrupt that story, right? They wouldn't necessarily ask me about my parents. If I'm running a story about running that pattern about my parents, right? Which I hope I've done a better job. Mom, Dad, I love you. Thank you for everything. Nothing's your fault. Everything's my responsibility. Mom and Dad, I love you. Right? Coming up on, earlier this week, it was a 3-year anniversary of losing Mom 3 weeks after lost Dad. So, wake me up when September ends is something that I've been singing out loud. It's a song by Green Day. Anyway, what I'm getting at is if I'm running pattern, if I'm talking about mom and dad and how I had to wait for commercial breaks to talk to them because all they did was watch TV instead of, right? That's the old story I used to tell all the time. And somebody said, oh, well, what shows would they watch? That's not going to help me. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a question. And Dallas, they wanted to find out who shot JR, and they couldn't listen to me getting bullied at school because they had to figure out who shot JR. And it's funny, right? It's comedy. My point is, don't ask me about Dallas. Ask me, have you ever seen a baseball melt on a hot summer day? What? No. What? Wait, what was I talking about again? If I'm telling story, right, about whatever, this pattern, and, I missed out. I didn't get to play Little League Baseball. How many people are sick and tired of me telling that story? I haven't told it in a number of years, right? I didn't get to play Little League. My parents didn't have the wherewithal to put me in Little League. What were they thinking? So I missed out, and I watched all my friends play, and I didn't get to play. So now I overcompensate through my son, who's now a Division I scholarship baseball player. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Everything works out, doesn't it? Okay, but you don't want to ask me, oh, yeah, which of your friends got to play? Don't ask me that. Right? If I'm telling the story about, hey, I didn't get to play Little League, say, hey, what was your master's thesis about? What? It was about perceived attributes and projected rate of adoption for online courses among students. What does that have to do with? Absolutely nothing, and that's the point, right? So any question is attention gaining, but we don't want to, as coaches, we don't want to ask a question that's super relative to the pattern that the person's running, or else we're in their pattern with them. We need to, hey, I'll ask a question like, what finger do you pick your butt with? When's the last time you failed to get to the bathroom on time? And then of course, if I'm going to do something drastic or shocking like that to really get them away from the pattern, I'll say, hey, just want to let you know, let me peek out from behind the curtain real quick and tell you that was a pattern interrupt. You were just running pattern. And if I didn't do something to get you off of that, it would have been like putting a syringe full of overwhelm into your arm. And I don't want that. I don't want to put a syringe full of obsessed, worried, overwhelmed. I don't want you to put a syringe full of regret or dread or shame into your arm. So I got to get to you before the needle hits the vein. That's why I asked you what finger you pick your ass with. I don't really want to know what finger you pick your ass with. I just needed to ask you something that would keep you from giving you a shot of obsessed, overwhelmed, worried, frustrated, shame. Now, I'd rather you be disgusted for 10 seconds and then to get you into another shot of overwhelm, another shot of abandoned, another shot of shame, another shot of dread, another shot of powerless. I'm not going to let you feed yourself your negative emotional addictions on my watch. So questions are really, really powerful there. I love that you bring it up as an intervention tool. There's all kinds of tools of intervention, all kinds of tools of confrontation that we talk about in our coaching and leadership training and our group mentoring. But you're on point, Sue. And at the beginning of this tip, without going back to the word for word, one of the greatest attention gaining measures on the planet is a question. I know of nothing better than a question.
Well, you also say at the start of the chapter about becoming a master of asking questions. And mastery occurs when you practice.
Yes.
And, see the results of your questioning, right?
Yeah. And not to toot my own horn, right? Am I allowed to humble brag, maybe, in this context? Like, Jeff, you're the host.
Well, I was going to say, you wrote the book.
Well, look, I just want you to know, I wrote this originally. Look at all those questions. I mean, it's almost worth reading in, right? Did you say you are committed to that? Is that something you're committed to accomplish by yourself, or do you want me to hold you accountable? You want front-end accountability. How long will it take you? When's the soonest availability you have? What are you doing in between now and then that's more important? And which of those two things is really more important? And are you comfortable pushing this off, or can you reschedule? Or what are you going to do when you get off the session and after that and after that? When's the soonest? I wrote these. I wrote all of these questions in as long as it took me to type them. That's it. Stream of consciousness. Right? I've been in this game, coaching, holding people accountable since 2007. So I've got my 10,000 hours, right? To quote Malcolm Gladwell's concept from Outliers, that once we have 10,000 hours of doing something, we've mastered it. But I'm going to tell you right now, and I think this is what you're talking about, Patty, and I'm going to mention it in Klubeck snack form. Are you ready? Putting the fun back in the fundamentals. The road to mastery is paved with fundamentals. And when we talk about relationships, and we talk about dialogue, and we talk about in exchange and interplay, when we talk about attention gaining devices, when we're talking about staying curious and getting to the root of matters and unpacking and peeling onions and uncovering and finding truth, there's nothing more powerful than questions. Is there?
Is there? What is that called is that a tie back?
A tie down, a tie up, I don't know, whatever. These sales techniques, I don't memorize the
well,
yeah, don't get me started on that. A tie down. You said you were going to buy 17 copies of my book, didn't you? What else? What else we got? Get a clue in 52, tip number 39, the power of questions. We have one more tip in the land of accountability. It's super exciting. It's where I get to bridge the gap between the integrity game and the Get a Clue in 52. It's a sweet spot for me, right in the middle of these two brands. Here I am. Feeling jovial, silly on a Friday is a lot better than the mood I was in prior to today's call. I'm telling you, it's everything we've talked about this year. We're knocking on October's door, right? We're about to have 3 months left, 12 weeks, right? It's exciting. And I guess technically it'll be 13 weeks left in the month. Left in the year, because we've got one tip next week left in accountability and then 12 tips. You want to talk about joviality? You want to talk about a stream of consciousness read of my word for word? I'm going to have music in my head as I might even find a way to play music through the stream if I can find the source song. But I'll just give you a hint right now. Are you guys ready? And by the way, Sue, Patty, have you guys read ahead to the last section of practice building?
Not in detail. I've flicked through. A long time
ago, I did.
Okay, well, guess what? I'm going to give you the tune right now if you want to read ahead, even though we got one more tip before we get into those 12 tips. In the spirit of joviality, ready? 99 bottles of beer on the wall, 99 bottles of beer. You take one down, pass it around, 99 bottles of beer on the wall. That was it.
If you take one down, aren't there only 98 left?
whatever, 98. Yeah, that's a detail that, right? So the idea is 12 accountabilities on the wall, 12 accountabilities. You take one down, pass it around, 11 accountabilities on, right? That's the rhythm of it. So I'm just giving you a preview that when we get into the last section of Get a Clue in 52, which is about practice building, we got 12 tips in that section. But as a point of review, we started the beginning of the year with 11 tips from self-promotion. We learn how to become a coach. We get comfortable calling ourselves a coach. Then we get comfortable calling the world or telling the world that we're a coach. Then we need to get coaching clients, either direct reports if we're a supervisor, manager, director, VP inside of an organization. We want direct reports. We want employee engagement. Or if we're a private coach for private practice, building our coaching practice, we want enrollment. We want people to enroll in our programs or to engage in our leadership. Either way, we want permission to lead. From there, it's motivation plus accountability equals results. And next week, we will have our last tip in the accountability section before we move on to the last section of the book, which is self-promotion. Today, I'm going to go ahead and fire up last call for comments, questions, jokes, riddles, feedback, expressions of praise, prayer. I don't care what you guys do. Last call. As we wrap up today's installment of Get a Clue in 52, thank you for laughing and smiling at all of my joviality. You guys can tell I'm giving myself a huge hit of joviality as antidote to one of the parenting challenges and struggles and moods that I was in prior to today's session. So thank you guys for being here for me. It's like you guys. I mean it. It's like therapy for me to get on. And that's why I said Get a Clue in 52 for coaches, myself included. 17, 18 years into the game, including my training leading up to when I first got money as a coach. You know, we're talking about almost 3 decades. I'm almost in my 3rd decade now. And I'm like, yeah, I've got a lot to give to aspiring and emerging coaches. And what I've learned in doing this work is how much I'm really giving myself. So I extend that gratitude to you, Sue and Patty, for being here and helping me through all of the wonderful benefits I get as I read through these tips every week. So thank you. Last call.
I was just going to say, I think one of the examples of power of questions is that it can shift the mood. You can take it from pretty heavy to joviality to lighten the mood. And
yeah, any shift in the river, like there's a saying, you can never step in the same river twice, right? And so our minds are like the river. They're constantly flowing. But we can intervene. You know, you could put a log in the river. You could dam it. You could throw a rock in. You know, like, does that make sense? So any change in the mind is a change in the mood.
Yeah. But we can use it, coming back to, you know, Patty reflecting on the mastery of asking questions.
Yeah.
To refine that and to be able to be creative and bring that joviality, bring that laughter. I think it's great. It's a gift.
Yeah, a couple of other real quick new questions. Stream of consciousness. What are you putting off that this mood you're in justifies? What mood would you rather be in than the one you're in right now? If you had the power to be in any mood under the sun that you wanted to be in right now, which one would you choose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
Right? What need does being in this mood serve for you? How does this mood help you achieve your goals? Those are just a couple of questions just off the top of my head based on your comment, right? Again, mastery, right? Mastery. Like we want question asking to be as effortless as sharing our name or breathing or blinking. Never have to think too hard about what my name is. I never have to think about breathing or blinking. And I want questions to come to me as automatically. It's wonderful, Sue. Wonderful. What else? We're still in last call for comments, questions, jokes, riddles, expressions of gratitude. Even if you have like a haiku or a limerick, I'll take it.
Oh my goodness.
So do you know what Stevie Wonder said when someone asked him how he felt about being blind?
I don't know, but I bet it was profound.
It was. He said, geez, I could have been black.
That's so great. Oh, wow. That's wonderful.
That's
Yeah.
my contribution, Jeff.
Yeah, enough said. Oh, man. That's so heavy and deep. Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. I can't even touch it. Just God bless Stevie Wonder. Truly one of the wonders of the world. All right. Anything else for today before we wrap up? All right. Thanks as always, and once again, for joining me on another installment of Get a Clue in 52 for coaches, myself included. We look forward to seeing everybody next week when we go over the 10 question sets that make up the integrity game, this new offering in the land of personal and professional growth that promises to make accountability non-threatening, that promises structural integrity for individuals, teams, and cultures, which a path towards retrofitting our focus, our resilience from the pressure tests that exists in the world. My heart is open and my love is expansive. Thank you guys so much for being here every week. We'll see you guys next time on Get a Clue in 52 for coaches, myself included. Thanks, everyone.
You. Good night,
Thank
Sue.
you. See you. Bye.
Bye.